I have a guest with me today who I'm so excited to introduce to you, although I bet most of you know him. He is involved in, he's got an amazing following. He's got law enforcement expertise. He's dabbled a bit in politics. And Brandon Tatum, now you got a book. We're going to talk about that. Welcome to the show. So Brandon, you are the author of a new book called Beaten Black and Blue. And but I really want to emphasize the subtitle, being a Black cop in an America under siege. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about a little bit about your law enforcement career and how you came to be where you're at today.
Yeah, I think, and thanks for having me on, Betsy. I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure to have met you the other day at my book signing, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I can speak to your audience as well. It's funny because I wanted the book just to read Being a Cop in America Under Siege, and the publishing company thought it was unique that, you know, I happen to be a Black cop in this situation in America where cops are portrayed as being racist and all of those different things. So it adds value to a unique experience that I have in law enforcement. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. You know, I never thought about being a cop, not one day in my life. You know, my first interaction with police officers when I was 8 years old, I got arrested. I think I was 8 or 9. I got arrested for smoking marijuana in a vacant house. And so, and to be honest, I was more afraid of my dad than a police officer. So that was kind of my first experience. You know, I grew up in an environment where, you know, we just believed police officers were racist and they didn't like Black people. And so that led me to having a certain belief. And when I got to college is when things really opened up for me, because growing up in I would call it an Afrocentric perspective, meaning I'm just around nothing but Black people. And when I went to college, it opened up my mind, meeting people from all around the country, different experiences, people that are outside of my community. And I started really reflecting and thinking like, you know what, the world is bigger than what I was growing up believing. And I got saved in 2008, and that's what really changed my life. You know, I stopped looking at color and stopped looking at people outside of looking at them as God's children and giving everything a fair shot. Once again, you know, getting that racist, you know, mentality and victim mentality out of my mind. And later in 2010, when I entered the NFL draft, I didn't get drafted like I wanted to. And I just was looking for a job, essentially. I really, again, I never thought about being a police officer. And then I did a ride along. Well, let me go back. You know, I applied for the police department, didn't think they would call me back. They called me back and I was shocked. And so I said, I need to figure out what's going on because I don't know nothing about policing. So I did a ride along with an officer who's an incredible officer in Tucson, Officer Sean Payne. And it blew my mind. And I felt like the first time I saw a hero was in Sean Payne. And I said, you know what, God, I really want to do this job. I really want to be a hero like Sean. And I joined the police department, and the rest is history.
Well, and I got to say, you know, you're a fellow Arizonan like I am. And my husband, Dave Smith, started in the 1970s in law enforcement in the Tucson Police Department. And Tucson, Arizona can be a very dangerous city. And so you saw a lot of things. And I think you ended up as were you their public information officer for a while?
Yeah, I was a PIO for about a year.
Right. So you dealt with the media and all that. And I know that then your perspective started to broaden, didn't it, outside of the Tucson Police Department?
Oh, yeah, it definitely did. I learned a lot in the police department, and I met a lot of great people. You know, like I said, Officer Sean Payne was one of the first people, my friend Woody and all these other guys that I met really changed my political perspective as well, because I was going into this thing and I was a staunch Democrat, as you would say. I grew up that way without having a real reason to be that way other than the fact that I was Black. And a lot of my colleagues were pinning these questions to me and saying, look, you know, I don't think that you really associated with that side. You are more conservative. You believe in God. You don't believe in abortion. You believe in, you know, marriage, the way that God intended it to be, all of these things. And I started really waking up and saying, you know what, maybe I am more conservative than I am liberal. And that kind of changed the trajectory of my politics. For the first time in my life, I voted for a Republican, and so on and so forth. But I think those experiences that I experienced with the Tucson Police Department and the people there really, you know, I guess thrusted me to the position that I am today, and some of the political mindset that I have.
What got you to pick up your phone and make that first video?
Oh man, that first video. I never made videos before. I really was just posting about Jesus on my Facebook page, and I would post it, and maybe 100 people would respond. The same 100 people that I go to church with and I interact with, and that's all the thought process was. But like I said, I was getting more political. I liked Ben Carson. I really wanted to vote for him as the president. I thought he was a tremendous man. I still think he's a tremendous man. I thought he would be a tremendous candidate for president, and he dropped out of the race and endorsed Donald Trump. And at the time I was like, why would he endorse Donald Trump? Donald Trump is just in this to embarrass all these politicians, and he's going to go back to being a billionaire. However, he ended up coming to Tucson, and I said, you know what, as a informed voter, if I'm going to consider anybody, I need to actually go and listen to their platform and not listen to what the media says and all this other stuff. I want to hear the person out, see if he's a racist like they said he was. And if he is, I'll know that I would never vote for that person. And I end up going to the event, and it was so shocking to me that I said, I need to inform the people I know. I thought just 100 people about what I experienced, but I was really too lazy to type it all out. So I said, let me just make a video. And I just pulled up the video, and I gave my experience in a very impartial way. I wasn't a supporter of Trump. I wasn't any of it. I just went to the event, and I saw how deranged the protesters were. And I saw how reasonable Donald Trump was and how reasonable the people there were. It was no racism and all the stuff that the media were portraying. He didn't get out there and say he hate Mexicans and say all kind of crazy stuff that you would expect him to say if you listen to the media. I felt like he gave really a pro-American principles that I believed in. And that really, inspired me to make that video, and it went crazy. I thought I was gonna get fired because somebody got beat up at the event, and I was like, that's what he get. He should have been out there acting a fool. Nobody would have beat him up. And I'm like, once it went viral, I was like, oh man, the chief is gonna watch this, and I'm like, I'm gonna get fired, but I didn't get fired, and it ended up leading me to making more videos and content because I realized that I had a unique perspective and a voice.
So then you get involved in something called Blexit. In fact, I believe you're the co-founder, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So talk a little bit about how you made that decision. And then I want to talk about what it was like to leave the relative security of a police job.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great. Those are great questions. And it was a very, unique position I was placed in. And I think if it wasn't for God and it wasn't for me being bold, I don't think I would have made it through that. But once I made videos on the police department, I made another video about Colin Kaepernick and my disappointment and disdain for him kneeling during the national anthem, because I felt that action was incredibly disrespectful to our founding fathers, to our forefathers, to the people in the Black community who fought so hard to give us, to get us in a position to have equal rights and freedom. And I felt it was so disrespectful. I made that video, and it had 70 million views. And that's when I left the Tucson Police Department, kind of on I would say a calculated risk. I was still certified as a police officer. I said, let me just try something different for a year and I'll come back. I ended up never coming back, but I left that for a conservative organization to be their spokesperson. I left that organization after about 3 months because they almost, took a complete spill, given the fact that Facebook algorithm changed and they almost went out of business. So I went to Turning Point USA with Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk. And how I got there was because me and Candace had become really good friends. And she said, hey, you need to come work for them. It's a great organization. And then in 2018, and this was in 2017, and in 2018, Candace Owens and I decided to co-found Blexit, which is a play on words. Brexit is the British exit, and the Blexit is kind of the Black exit from what we would consider to be the Democrat plantation. Although the organization is not necessarily about politics, it's about waking up and opening your eyes to having a more balanced thought process and being able to become the best version of yourself and things like that. So I joined that we co-founded that organization with Candace Owens. It's been a tremendous success. I think we in all but probably 6 states now, and we started from scratch. I mean, we were in one city in Tennessee, and then we just sprouted all over the country. I think probably by the end of the year, or maybe the first quarter next year, we'll be in all 50 states.
That's extraordinary. And you do a lot of commentator work. I know you're on Fox News, and then you have your own YouTube channel, and you get involved in, not just politics. You also speak out about various law enforcement issues. One of the most notable things you've done is your comments and your investigative work on the Brianna Taylor situation, right?
Yeah, that was a case that hit hard for me, because I felt like the media had come out and had lied so much. And once I found out the truth, I was enraged that people wouldn't simply be honest about it. And they portrayed these law enforcement officers, Sergeant Mattingly being one of them, is a person that I've become good friends with lately. But they portrayed him as these crazy racist white cops doing illegal warrants on a black girl's house who was just laying in bed, sleeping and minding her business. And it was not true. And I felt like the police always get a bad rap. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote that book, because I feel like police are always getting a bad rap, and like nobody's informed about these things. And most people don't do any research. They look at the news and they say, oh, they had no business doing a no-knock warrant. And I'm like, it wasn't a no-knock warrant. They had a no-knock exception, but they knocked. And to me, I think that's what really got her killed. If they would have done a no-knock, I feel like she probably would be alive today. But so it really bothered me. And once I found out the truth and the intricate investigation that they were investigating her, that she wasn't really an EMT, she had been in trouble before, or at least investigated before, for her having a rental car with a dead body found in it. This Jamarcus Glover guy was knee deep in the criminal behavior. They got pole cam, they got jailhouse calls. And all of this is out there, and the mainstream media did nothing. They didn't say nothing. They didn't report nothing. And they're trying to act like this is a racist issue. And so I was enraged. And Sergeant Mattingly got shot in the process. And I'm like, where's the justice for him? He literally got shot, and they were just doing their job. They pay out the family millions of dollars. And then the officers who were actually doing their job, after getting criticized and ridiculed and threatened, having their lives in danger, once they, go through their little bullcrap investigation and find out that the officers did nothing wrong, they get nothing in return. They just have to take it on the chin. And so that was one of the cases I felt like I had to say something about, and I had to do something about.
So then we have the George Floyd situation. George Floyd dies in police custody, and that unleashes an atmosphere that we have. I've been in law enforcement for 40 years now. I've never seen anything like this. The closest that we came was the Michael Brown shooting, and that post-Ferguson effect, as we talk about. But then in a post-George Floyd era, all of a sudden, cops are absolutely beyond vilified, and it's all based on race. And so then you decide to write a book about being a Black cop in America. And I've just got to say, as a resident of Arizona, being a Black cop in a state that has only about 6% of our population is Black. And so you decided to tell the story, not just your story, but the story of other police officers. Tell me how that all evolved.
Yeah, so I started out saying that, I just want to expose people to the truth of law enforcement and give them a perspective from a person who did it. And because almost every time I talk to somebody and I explain the intricate nuances of policing, they're completely shocked and have no idea that this goes on. And even I had that effect. When I became a police officer, I was like, I didn't know police officers did all this stuff. I mean, I was completely, watching Cops isn't enough. Watching Police 360 or whatever those shows are just a small fraction of what police officers actually go through. But then I started thinking, my story is unique, but I don't have the only story, so there's other Black officers that I know that are currently working, because I had left the police department in 2017, and there's white officers that I know that are currently working, that have an incredible story and can give a perspective in this era of what it's like being a police officer. And I wanted to initially give a different perspective of being a Black cop, because it's sort of unique to a certain degree, because you get hatred from all sides. And that's why the title was Beating Black and Blue. It was like I was criticized for being Black in a police officer because I'm a sellout to my own people and working for the white man, and massa tell me what to do. And then wearing a uniform in general, people just hate you anyway. And getting pushback from just being in law enforcement in general and having people attack us for no apparent reason, but because they're following the brainwashing of social media and the mainstream media. So I thought it would be very good and a great idea to not only address issues like police brutality, defunding the police, what does that really look like, but also giving other officers a story and saying, okay, what is it like working in Baltimore? You know, one of our officers worked in Baltimore. What is it like working in, in Tucson, as a white cop in today's society? And I felt like I wanted to give that perspective. And at the very end of the book, we give solutions. I wanted to make it a quick read. It's 144 pages where a person don't feel like they have to spend 3 years trying to read this book and digest it, but it's a quick, digestible read to get the basic foundation of law enforcement and kind of what's going on in our climate today.
Well, and that's the thing about the book. It is a quick read, and it does offer solutions, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about it. Plus, it's just interesting. I mean, it's a fun book, whether you've been a cop or you want to know more about what it's like to be a cop. The book provides all of that, and we are at a stage now in this country where we really need solutions, don't we, to some of these issues?
100%. Everybody's got a lot to say, but they don't have an end goal. They don't have a solution base. And I feel like most of our leaders and politicians, even police chiefs, they don't have an end goal. They just want to go along to get along. They want to get on TV. They got their stars, and they want to come out and say, I'm the leader of this department and I'm going to be such a social justice warrior today. But they don't have a solution to the problem. They don't even want to engage in a solution. A lot of these, and I like to blame police chiefs because they are the ones that are out here spewing this stuff most of the time. They get out there and they talk about what's wrong with the police department, but they don't want to say, no, we got problems in the community too. And it's not just the police department that needs to reach out. It's the community that needs to reach out as well. Do you want a relationship in any sense? A relationship, it takes two participants. You can't have a marriage without both people working at it. And I wish that the leaders who are in law enforcement have the most visible platforms will say some of these things, but they're too cowardice to say it in many of these cases. Some of the reasons in municipal police departments is because they're literally owned by the city council, and some sheriffs may have a little bit more to say, but I just wish that these police chiefs will step out and say more and have more solutions, because I feel like that their words have a lot of value in curbing the narrative that we have today.
One of the things that we see a lack of discussion about, and you kind of intimated that, is we talk a lot about how the police are the problem and the things that we need to do to improve and this and that. We don't talk much anymore about criminality. And I think part of that is because there's a very uncomfortable conversation when we talk about criminality as far as who's committing violent crime. We hear that our system is racist and there's more Black people in prison than there should be, and there's more Black people arrested by American law enforcement than we should be arresting. And that's difficult to talk about. It's certainly difficult for somebody like me to talk about as a middle-aged white woman. How can we further that conversation?
Yeah, I think that I understand the difficulty, because our society is so warped and I would argue completely stupid when it comes to people speaking truth. Because if you're white, you can't tell the truth about Black people. If you're Black, you can say whatever you want to say, essentially. But if you're white, you can't say the truth about Black people. And it's sad that we live in a state like that. However, there needs to be truth in order for us to get solutions. We can't just run around lying to each other and just make believe world and think something is going to change. If a person believes that there is a problem, which I think it is, of Black people being disproportionately incarcerated, then let's talk about the truth of the matter so we can get to the bottom of it and we can actually see some changes. The truth of the matter is that Black people in America, and I would say Black people, mostly Black males in America, are committing disproportionate amounts of crime. 54% of all murder arrests are Black men. That's a crazy number when you think about Black men in this country only make up 6% of the population. And if you think about the Black men who are actually committing crimes, I wouldn't say half of them are, because that'll be 3%. So you can say half of half, which would be, an even lower percentage than 3% of the population committing over half of all murders, nearly half of violent crimes. if we would say, okay, let's look at that, and now let's digest why are young Black men committing so much crime. Maybe it's fatherlessness, maybe it's environmental issues, maybe it's perpetuated issues from in the past, whatever you want to call it. If we understand that it's not about race, it's about behavior that people are displaying, which are leading them to be arrested at disproportionate numbers, we can fix those things. If you look at George Floyd's situation, you say, look, the guy is a nut. He was arrested, I don't know how many times. He's on drugs. He's committing a crime which necessitated law enforcement response. He's wrong. And also the police officer's wrong. You don't put your knee on somebody's neck until they die. That's just not something that you're trained to do. And so if we can look at both of those situations and say, what can we improve for the citizens, and what can we improve in law enforcement? And also have a clear conversation about, was that even taught for you to kill somebody and stay on their neck for a disproportionate amount of time? That's not even taught. So when you talk about police reform, and I know I could go down the rabbit hole with this, when you talk about police reform, let's talk about real tangible things that can be reformed. If a cop shoot a man in the back, what are we reforming? If that cop gets prosecuted and goes to jail, that's the way the system works. They don't teach cops to shoot people in the back, especially unlawfully.
Absolutely. Brandon, where can people find you, listen to you, and where can they buy the book?
Also, you can just go to theofficertatum.com, which is my website. You can find my YouTube channel there. You can find my merch store there. You can find my book there. I mean, everything Tatum will be on theofficertatum.com. Also, all of my social media links are there. My biggest platform that I speak on every single day, I think 2 or 3 times a day, I make videos, is on my YouTube channel at The Officer Tatum YouTube channel.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Sam, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.